Happy Monday and welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch Case Cracked. I'm John Lorden. Before we dive into today's story, I want to remind you that you can get another Lorden Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit www.seriouslymysterious.com and subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. There is no YouTube version of the finished podcasts, but if you want to join a live secret recording session of Seriously Mysterious here on YouTube, make sure you have notifications for this channel turned on. Recording sessions are live only. They disappear as soon as it ends. So when you see that notification, head right over so you don't miss out and spend a little time with me live creating a show. On to today's story. Of course, Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that solve that mystery. Today's case is a truly baffling one. It's called The Secret of Room 349. It's just after dark on Wednesday, September 15th, 2010, and Greg Flanagan was settling into his nightly routine. He was in the area of Beaumont, Texas, Monday through Friday of every week, working for the oil land leasing business he had partnered with his brother to create. On weekends, he returned to his wife Susie and their home 2 hours away in Lafayette, Louisiana. They were now in the 15th year of their second marriage. Susie had been in her 20s when she first met Greg while she sang in a local rock band. She instantly adored him, telling her friends that he was the nicest man she had ever met. Soon after, the two were married for a short time before they divorced. Susie never forgot Greg, and after a number of years, she decided to contact him. His first words to her were, "I've been waiting for you to call." They soon picked up right where they had left off. When he was in Beaumont, Greg always stayed at the Elegante Hotel in the Cabana. The 3-story wing included a swimming pool that he never visited, as he liked to keep to himself. Greg's routine started as soon as he arrived at his room each evening. First, he would turn up the air conditioner to cool the room just the way he liked it. He would then change into his pajama bottoms while he sat in bed with his ashtray, cigarette pack, lighter, phone, TV remote, and a candy bar. While he watched TV, Greg would chain smoke and slowly eat his candy until he decided to go to sleep. That night, he was sitting in room 348 watching Iron Man 2 when he received an email update from his wife regarding their tax extension. Satisfied with the progress she was making, he wrote back, "You're doing good, babe," and signed off for the night. The following day, however, Greg missed his morning call to Susie, something that he rarely did. Concerned, she decided to call his office, but was told that he hadn't come in that day. His coworkers were becoming concerned themselves and decided to drive over to the hotel to check on him. When they knocked on his door and received no answer, the men contacted the hotel manager. Other residents in the hotel heard the disturbance caused by the coworkers trying to find him, and they called emergency services. When everyone arrived and entered room 348, they found Greg doubled over on a rug in front of the door, dead, with a burnt cigarette still cupped in his left hand. There were no obvious signs of trauma. Within an hour, Detective Scott Apple arrived to start his investigation. He noted that the room was very hot, as if the air conditioner had been turned off or had stopped working. Unfortunately, there was little else to go on. The room showed no signs of a break-in or struggle. Greg's body also showed no signs of blood or wounds. Robbery wasn't an option, as his wallet was still in his jeans and had cash in it. There was also well more than $1,000 of cash in the room itself. Detective Apple questioned everyone in the nearby rooms, but they all insisted they had heard nothing. He had begun to think that with the man's age and smoking habit, maybe this was just a natural death. Once crime scene photos had been taken, Greg's body was transported to the Jefferson County Medical Examiner for an autopsy. The ME quickly noted that Greg, at 55, appeared to be in decent shape. When he started his examination of the body, he did find 2 injuries, a 1-inch abrasion on his left cheek that he probably sustained when he fell to the rug, and his scrotum was swollen and bruised around a small tear. From there, he could see more bruising that spread up from the groin and across the right hip. To the ME, it looked like Greg had been hit hard by something. When he opened the torso, he was amazed to see an excessive amount of blood and internal damage. He found lacerations on organs, broken ribs, and even a hole in the right atrium of his heart. He could come to only one conclusion. Someone had either beaten Greg to death or crushed him, with the first wound to the groin coming from a hard kick. He felt that another blow to the chest had been so severe that it caused lethal damage, and Greg bled out internally. For the manner of death, he marked the case a homicide. On September 24th, Detective Apple returned to the cabana wing to question its occupants again. The first group had the same story as before. The only other people left on the floor were 5 electricians who were in town working for an oil company. When Apple questioned the first two, Thomas Elkins and Scott Hamilton, they claimed to have had no interaction with Greg at all. That just left the group in room 349, Trent Pisano, Lance Muller, and Tim Steinmetz. Although they tried to be helpful, they had nothing new to add and claimed again they hadn't heard or seen anything. The only other thing that Apple could track down from that night was a call Greg made to maintenance. At some point, he had tried to microwave popcorn and blew an electrical circuit. The outage affected all the adjacent rooms and those directly underneath. The circuit was reset and power was restored, but the maintenance worker's dark past as a sex offender caught the detective's attention. Unfortunately, when the man was investigated, no link to Greg could be found, and he was released. 6 months later, the investigation was going nowhere. As 2011 wore on, a $50,000 reward was offered, but no tips panned out. A former FBI agent was brought on board along with a private investigator from Houston. They found nothing new. The physical evidence just didn't match the scene. Greg could not have been beaten somewhere else and then returned to his room because he showed no outward signs of being beat other than the bruise and the small tear to his groin. There was also no blood lost from the body. They could find no enemies, no ex-lovers or adulterous relationships. Other than smoking, he seemed to have no addictions. Everyone liked Greg. Susie was almost ready to believe that her husband had died of natural causes, but she, like the police, couldn't reconcile his internal injuries with his death. That was when her attorney referred her to former Long Island cop and DEA special agent Ken Brennan. Everyone felt that a fresh set of eyes on the case could help them. In April of 2011, he visited Susie in Lafayette and questioned her extensively about her life and Greg's. He came to the same conclusion investigators had. Greg had no apparent enemies, but he found there were a couple of things that had always bothered Susie. She said she was surprised to hear that his hotel room had been so hot when officers arrived. Greg loved the room to be cold and would always keep the air conditioner running. It was also odd that they found his cigarette in his left hand, as Greg was right-handed. The next morning, Apple and Brennan met at room 348 to go over crime scene photos, the case file, and the room itself. They knew that the maintenance man had seen Greg alive after he fixed the blown circuit at 8:30 p.m. His death must have occurred soon after because Brennan believed he didn't get a chance to turn the air conditioner back on. Greg had been found on a rug near the door of his room. Brennan felt that the man had lit his cigarette in his right hand, then moved it to his left to reach toward the door handle, but before he could reach it for whatever reason, he died. While going over evidence, an investigator with the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office suggested the men try talking to coworkers of the electricians. That's when they finally caught a break. One coworker claimed that one afternoon, Lance Muller had confided in him that the night Greg died, Muller had discharged a gun in room 349. When the two men returned to the room, they immediately began inspecting everything for a bullet hole. They were about to give up when Brennan noticed an indentation in the wall near a door that led to the next room. Underneath it, he could see the wall had been patched. When they examined room 349, they noticed that on that same wall was a small, perfectly round hole that had been patched with a dab of toothpaste. It was at hip level and looked an awful lot like a bullet hole. When the spot was excavated, it was indeed found to be just that. With this new information in tow, Apple and Brennan visited the ME on the case. When he was shown the new evidence, he admitted that yes, all the damage and the hole in the heart could be from a bullet. The bullet would have had entered Greg's scrotum, traveling in and up from there, with the skin being soft enough around it that it folded over, making the wound less obvious. Susie had Greg cremated, so there would be no bullet to show a jury, but everyone involved felt that they had enough evidence to continue. It's now June 1st of 2011, and the electricians are back in their home state of Wisconsin. But when Steinmetz was contacted, he agreed to meet police at the nearby Chippewa County Sheriff's Department. At first, he was surprised to be contacted months after the event. Under questioning, he gave the same story as before, never admitting that a gun had been present. As the day wore on, he was pressed further and finally told investigators exactly what happened. He claimed that he, Mueller, and Pisano had all been drinking beer heavily when Mueller asked Pisano to go to his truck and bring back a bottle of whiskey and his 9mm Ruger. After more drinking, Mueller began to play with the gun, pointing it at the other men in the room when it suddenly went off. After inspecting the hole, Pisano left angry, while Steinmetz and Mueller went downstairs to the bar. Later that day, Trent Pisano corroborated his story. The two men claimed they didn't think they had done anything wrong because later that night, they heard Greg coughing. No one ever knocked on the door to check on him at any time. They just assumed he was okay. In order to get Mueller to confess, Steinmetz offered to call him and talk with him. On the recorded call, he explained that officers had taken him and Pisano in for questioning, and they had told officers everything. Mueller was angry and upset, first asking if they had told them about the gun going off, then claiming that the ME said nothing about a bullet. The cops were just using them to close the case, he claimed. At that point, it didn't matter. Apple and Brennan had all they needed. At trial, Mueller entered a no-contest plea to manslaughter. At his sentencing hearing on October 29, 2012, the judge ran through the case and the terrible choices that had been made that day. He stated that if Mueller had come forward in the beginning, he probably wouldn't have served any jail time. Now, he would serve 10 years for manslaughter and criminally negligent manslaughter. No one was ever able to explain the coughing the men claimed to hear later that night. Either they were mistaken, lying, or Greg lived far longer than investigators believed. A thought that still haunts Susie. In court, Susie was able to speak directly to Mueller. Quote, "I have waited over 2 years to look you in the face, eye to eye. You would have never come forward with the truth. You murdered him. No, you didn't intentionally seek him out to murder him, but you murdered him with every lie you told, with every intentional, selfish deception. You saw his body taken out of the room in a body bag the next day. You knew you killed him. You have met your match. I would have spent the rest of my life tracking you down, and I found you. Greg's murderer, I brought you to justice." Case cracked. We would like to thank Vanity Fair for its excellent coverage of this case, ABC News, the Beaumont Enterprise, the Chippewa Herald, and the Southeast Texas Record. Of course, a big thank you to Christy Arnhart for working on today's story, and let's welcome her to the show to talk about it. And Christy, welcome again to the show. Nice to have you back.
Hello.
Thank you for putting this story together, and boy, what a story. This has just really been... I heard pieces of this story kind of when it was originally happening, but I never got into the level of detail like we did today. And it just raises so many questions and feelings. I mean, it's a terrible thing that Susie is going through in this. One of the big points I wanted to talk about is, and I don't know if we really hit this in the script, when I was originally hearing about this story, there was kind of a quick version of the story that was kicking around, which is this guy was in a hotel room. He's watching Iron Man 2. He's laying down in bed, and someone in a neighboring room fires a gun. The bullet goes through the wall and then enters his body while he's laying in bed. And I just wanted to make that clarification because I think that explains to people a bit of the path that the bullet traveled and why it made sense that it would even hit his heart after entering in already a terribly sensitive place for men.
Yeah.
So what are your feelings about this case? What did you come out of this case with?
Well, first of all, shame on them. Who
Yeah.
fires a gun off in a hotel room and doesn't check?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, they knew the next day when they saw paramedics removing this body that something had happened. They questioned the paramedics, they questioned officers, almost like they were trying to cover their own trail.
Well, and that it's interesting you say it like that because we know that one of the men, the guy that fires the weapon, goes to jail, but the others that were seemingly covering for him, no charges.
No, I couldn't find anywhere that charges were filed on anyone but Mueller. I don't, I just don't understand that. I mean, omissions are still lies. They still help to cover up this horrible murder,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it was unintentional or not.
Yeah, and I really, it's interesting to me that that one suggestion of, hey, talk to the coworkers of the electricians is really, that's like what cracks the door open for this case to just completely open up. And
Oh,
it's,
yeah, because they were all sticking to their story.
yeah, yeah. But
Mhm.
thankfully it didn't last long. Also, Christy, there's a gunshot at a hotel. No one else hears this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I know it just seems crazy to me. I know that pretty much everybody was watching Iron Man 2. It was the new movie, and I imagine they had it turned up loud. And I guess you could mistake that for a gunshot.
Yeah.
But the next morning, they were so excited by what was going on outside the room. Everybody heard it and called police, paramedics. Like there was a gunshot the night before, and you didn't call anybody.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because you've got these guys. I would assume that the guys were being loud in their room if they're being all boisterous and drunk and, hey, go get my
Hmm.
gun. And he's waving it around. And that doesn't prompt any type of call to the authorities, which might have actually helped at that time. But the next day, you've got coworkers who are coming to check on him, and just the ruckus that they're making in terms of trying to check on him, you've got people that are staying in the hotel calling the authorities. It's really weird that it happened that way.
It is.
I don't know if this is just a place that is, maybe it's just a loud hotel. I don't know. I mean, I've certainly stayed at some places where I'm like, those are some strange noises, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So there, you're mentioning in the notes some other suits were filed in the case. What happened with those?
Well, Susie had filed a civil suit against the hotel and against the five electricians.
Hmm.
I believe it was, she was talking about, like we said, obviously there was noise before. Why didn't the hotel make a better effort to go and talk to these men and quiet them down? Maybe this would have never happened.
Yeah.
But it seems like after charges were filed against Mueller, that lawsuit was dropped. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's because maybe she couldn't get the civil suit to go through, or maybe it just accomplished what she needed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another thing I'm always, when I hear about families that are going for civil suits and stuff like this, it makes me always think about the aspect of, you're going to live in this for that much longer. You're going to analyze and hear it analyzed and hire experts and hear people talk about it over and over and over for years in some cases for those civil suits. Is it really the best thing for you emotionally, mentally? Um, yeah,
You definitely have to want it,
yeah.
because I can't imagine how horrible that would be.
Yeah, and I don't know that a suit against the hotel, like a wrongful death type suit, I don't think there's a whole lot to that that could be
Hmm.
processed in this type of case. I mean, they're not responsible for making sure that the walls are bulletproof. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be the only condition that I think, if they were responsible, that would help with this.
Mhm.
Um, wow, wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. We really appreciate you, and thank you for
No,
all your work
thank
on Case
you.
Cracked.
This one was definitely one of the oddest ones that I have ever researched.
It is. It is. This is definitely earning its brain scratch label. Yeah. And we also have some other people to thank. Thank you, PayPal supporters Emma Rostron, Hillary Green, Brandy Fry, and Judith Stanton. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for PayPal, sign up for Patreon, or buy merchandise. All of it keeps me here with limited commercials, and in some cases, we have to go completely without commercials altogether. So I really appreciate your support. Together, we'll continue learning about justice and how to keep ourselves and our families safe. I'll be back tomorrow on the Seriously Mysterious podcast, or I'll see you again on Wednesday with a new episode of Searchlight right here on YouTube on the Lord and Arts channel.